Written by Speedweed. When
The
I
one and only.
when I need something to pick me up, but also bring me down, we know who to call. Good evening, troublemakers. Welcome to episode 45 of the Lasercomb Podcast, the show where we comb through random episodes of classic TV series with a fine-tooth laser. I'm the Siege, one of your hosts.
And I'm NeoCal, your other host.
And this week on the Lasercomb Podcast, we are carrying on with our Sci-Fi Originals Month as voted on by our patrons over at patreon.com/lasercomb. And we are talking about the 47th episode overall of a little show called Haven.
Haven.
This
Haven.
episode is called Crush. It originally aired on November 1st, 2013. Haven is a TV show, sci-fi original, obviously. TV show that ran from 2010 to 2015. It stars Emily Rose, who fans of certain games involving a dude named Nathan Drake might recognize as the voice and performance capture and likeness of the character in those games, Elena.
I did not realize.
Yeah. Emily Rose plays a character named Audrey Parker, who's an FBI agent who goes to this little town called in Maine called Haven, where weird stuff's happening. Town is afflicted with things called the quote unquote the troubles, which are kind of just nebulous supernatural events that keep happening. Uh, Audrey Parker feels very drawn to this town. She doesn't really know why. She also has trouble like remembering her past, anything before like her adult life, essentially. She doesn't remember her childhood. And
Interesting.
as the show goes on, you start finding out more and more that she is actually has a very direct connection to this weird little town and the troubles that are going on.
Hmm.
Now, I watched the first season of Haven back in the day as it was originally airing back in 2010, but then I kind of fell off the show.
Okay, okay.
So I going into this, I was a little familiar with at least the early days of the series, but this episode is a fourth season episode, and a whole lot apparently has happened between seasons one and seasons four. So much so that I had to do a little bit of research to figure out what was going on. Like, why is Audrey being called Lexi in this episode?
Whereas I didn't look into anything because I've never heard of this show before.
uh, this show is based on a Stephen King book called The Colorado Kid. It's apparently quite loosely based on it from what I could tell.
Hmm.
So we got Audrey in this
A
episode.
lawnmower man situation.
Probably not as egregious as that because King didn't remove his name from this series, but
Right, right. So it still gets his seal of approval.
he's still willing to cash that check.
Yeah. Damn
Yeah.
it, a paycheck's a paycheck.
Not in the
And I
case of
feel
Lawnmower Man, apparently, though.
And yeah, not there. And speaking of a paycheck is a paycheck, it's how I kind of feel about the acting levels of the the show here. I'm getting a lot of what was that channel with a lot of like young like adult like drama shows with like no budget.
The CW.
I'm getting CW vibes here. A lot of CW vibes.
Yeah, I could see that. This episode is I didn't remember the show being this melodramatic. Like there are straight up scenes where I was just like face palming like repeatedly. I'm like, "Oh God, this is so like melodramatic and like soapy."
I would list a couple of them, but there you go. Melodramatic and soapy.
Yeah.
That's the great summary for Haven. There's so much like, oh man, it's serialized and also episodic. And when you run into shows like that, they need to introduce a conflict,
Yep.
further the greater plot, and fix that conflict in the same episode. Ooh, conflict of this episode's pretty fucking boring, my dude.
Right. So this, yeah, like you said, this show is both episodic and has an overall like meta narrative going on. And the show's kind of trying to have it both ways. Like it's doing a monster of the week type thing, but it also has like a persistent storyline going on.
And I'm
Um,
fine with that.
I,
Stargate is like that.
I was gonna say Stargate is like that, especially later seasons of like SG-1 and Atlantis. Like they're very much like that, and they do that quite well. Um, maybe maybe this is just a bad episode of the show.
I want to, yeah.
Um,
The funny
be,
thing is, I don't even think that the trouble that happens in this episode is necessarily boring. I just think it's written very boring.
the trouble
Um,
that occurs in
yeah,
this episode is, in my opinion, quite stupid and boring.
we call it the Pressure Brothers. And no, it's not a pressure washing service in Haven.
Something happens at the beginning of the episode that really confused me. So we see Eric Balfour. I don't know what his character's name is, but that's the name of the actor. He's apparently has murdered his brother and is burying his body.
This guy behind me in the video portion.
Y- Yeah, yeah.
Coincidentally, one of the better actors,
He was
better. Uh,
he's pretty decent. He was actually in a lot of genre TV at this time. I don't really know what happened to him because I
Also,
haven't
I
seen
dig
him.
his hair.
I
As
haven't seen him
a
in
fellow
anything in a
man
long
with
time.
long hair, curly hair, I dig his hair. But
One
yeah,
of
I
my,
was like, oh, I like this guy. And then I didn't like anyone else.
one of my exes was or the person who I was with actually while I watched the first season of the show was really into Eric Balfour. And I was really into Emily Rose, so it was like just eye candy for both of us watching the
There
show.
you go.
um, but yeah, so he apparently has murdered his Eric Balfour has murdered his brother, and I don't really know
As one
why.
does.
Yeah, I don't really know why. He's burying his body. Um, the main so the name of the as I mentioned, the name of the episode is Crush, and the reason why is because the troubles that are affecting Haven in on this week's episode involve a couple of dudes who essentially have create fields around them of such like pressure that it's like being at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah,
So
atmospheric pressures can go up to like hundreds.
yeah,
But in the case of the second brother in the second part of the episode, like 10, like thousands
yeah.
of PSI.
And so
Um,
they get around this by putting on deep sea diving suits because like things are literally like people's heads are exploding, like objects are being
they're
crushed.
being things under like pressure, a negative, like for example, the reason balls stay inflated is because uh, they're like pressurized, right? It's the opposite of this, right? So things are getting caved in, lungs
Yeah,
are collapsing, car windows are being like smashed in.
yeah,
There was one continuity thing that I enjoyed. Back when the trouble first appeared, I noticed one of the cars, the windows smashed outwards. And I'm like, if it was a pressure phenomenon, the windows would smash inwards.
yeah.
And then later in the show, they're like, all the cars nearby, their windows smashed inwards except this one. So this is where the trouble must have originated because the glass was shattered
Oh,
outwards. And I'm
okay, yeah,
like,
yeah,
hey, okay. Because I was like, haha, I caught something wrong. But no, so that felt rewarding, catching that like little tidbit and being like, oh,
right.
hey, it's like a video game where it's like you're playing Sherlock Holmes or like a mystery game and you actually catch one of the things before the characters explain it to the player or the viewer. And I was like, yeah, that's my takeaway from this episode. Yeah, I
Yeah.
noticed which way broken window go.
Uh, Too bad they I mentioned they wear to resolve all of this bullshit, they end up putting on deep sea diving suits. Too bad they didn't take that into consideration when they're walking around in the deep sea diving suits and strolling casually, just walking through the
Through the
street.
town, by the way, with like these corded oxygen.
The pressure is supposed to be so severe that it's like being at the bottom of the ocean, but you see these people in these deep sea diving suits just casually walking through the streets. They wouldn't be able to just walk normally. They would be like essentially like you're like underwater. You wouldn't be able to move very quickly. So
I guess that's true, but in the medium of air, it's more pressurized. But also, this is a low budget like show. But the conflict that happens once they eventually do that, like uh, Christopher Siege said, they're walking through. Um, excuse me, they're walking through just the town to get to one of the brothers who
yeah,
has this phenomenon coming off of him, right? And his phone doesn't even work because he's trying to talk to his brother, and they're like, "Don't move!" And anyone going near this field will die.
yeah.
Their lungs will collapse, and the pressure is so immense they die.
But yeah, so this pressure is apparently so severe that it's crushing everything around them. But when they wear these deep sea diving suits, they feel no resistance as they're moving.
And
That doesn't seem
regard
realistic to me.
well, it's not that they would feel a ton of resistance necessarily, but you'd have to eh, even if they moved in a wonky way or whatever, that it wouldn't have made the scene better because there's the mini conflict that happens when they're going to try to talk to this guy. Apparently, just breathing really slow is how you
Right?
fucking fix this. But
It's like that
one of
weird
their
shit in Avengers Age of Ultron where like to calm down the Hulk, Black Widow was like singing him lullabies or something like that. Like it's a fucking weird plot element which they actually acknowledged like how dumb that was in that new She-Hulk show that just came
uh,
out.
clips of it were so cringe. I don't know if I can bring myself to to watch it.
Oh, She-Hulk? I watched the first episode. I quite enjoyed it.
Oh, okay, okay. um, but what the heck was I saying? Oh, the mini conflict in that, like the bigger conflict is one of the people in the suits because you need three of them
Yeah,
apparently.
apparently.
Their line breaks and gets snagged because they're just walking through town. They have like
Yeah.
hundreds of meters of this air supply hose. Wouldn't they be a little bit more hardy than just getting snagged on a bench and ripping?
You'd think.
Now, here's where it gets iffy. When you're underwater and your line breaks, water gets in the line, they can't provide oxygen, right? They're not
Right.
underwater. The pressure is so immense outwards, it would force air into the line. But in the show, it shows air going tss and escaping the line.
Yeah, yeah.
But it would
That
force
that's
air.
not how physics works.
And so in the hose, if it's breaking, it's showing him going and they're like, "Don't take your helmet off. I know you want to, but like, like the pressure is gonna like freaking kill you and like cave in
Yeah,
your
yeah.
skull. Like, come on, man, you go talk to him. I'll take him and leave the phenomenon radius, leave the trouble radius, right?" And I'm like, it would be pressurizing the inside of a suit through the tube.
Yeah.
The way to fix that would be to duct tape the or like hold the hose
Yeah.
so it doesn't force more, and it wouldn't be perfect, but it's not a matter of not getting oxygen. Whatever. It's I
So
had a big gripe with that little thing. I was like, come on, guys, that's not how
so you had a big so essentially we both had gripes about like
the same scene for different reasons.
but it's both like relating to like the physics of it essentially, but just
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah,
So
they bugged us
we
in different
both
ways.
so the big takeaway here folks is that the this entire scene is really dumb and doesn't pass the refrigerator test.
Oh,
which I've explained what the refrigerator test is before, but the
even I
refrigerator
remember it. Yeah.
just to give people a refresher, the refrigerator test is when you're watching a show and you're like, oh, okay, but then you get up and like go to the refrigerator to like get a snack or get a drink or whatever, and you start like thinking about it, and like immediately like the things you start being like, hey, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense.
Wait a second. Yeah, if you're given any amount of time to like think about something and it doesn't make any sense, you're probably
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So
Um,
that's what I mean when I say it doesn't pass the refrigerator test. Oh boy, this the central conflict of this episode doesn't.
so
I
that's the central conflict, and we just jumped to like the 40-minute mark. But let us talk about
there
the B plot, the serialized story that seems to be progressing here.
so I mentioned Audrey Parker going by the name Lexi in this episode,
Yeah.
and it seems like she has a different personality. So I had to do some research about this because I was like, what the hell is going on? So we're going to explain it to you, and I'm going to explain it to listeners who maybe haven't watched all of the show, why this character is being known as Lexi. So the reason why she can't remember anything prior to her adult life is she's actually from Haven and is like a century old. Um, she is
Okay.
the person who created the Troubles originally, and her punishment for that was every 27 years her personality, she doesn't age, but every 27 years her personality like completely resets. Her
And her
personality
memories are also
and her memories are gone. Her personality, she becomes a completely different person. So that's what's happened here. And so every 27 years she's compelled, when she's about to have her personality reset, she's compelled to go back to Haven.
oh, interesting.
And
Even though she doesn't know why.
she's compelled to go back as sort of like a penance to like try and fix all of the harm that she's caused in her various lifetimes.
Wild.
Yeah. So that's why she's going by Lexi. So that's part of the overall like narrative of this show. There's this thing with a horseshoe crab with human eyes that some chick keeps
Creepy
seeing.
as fuck.
Creep.
Yeah, the chick that ponytail guy is he's trying to make a clean break after he killed his brother, not because he's ashamed of killing his brother,
Right.
but he's he's done like he mentions to the short-haired chick who seems to be living with him, lives on
Yeah.
his barge. Of course this guy's a dude that lives on a barge.
Of
Um,
course. I mean, it is Maine.
yeah.
It's a
And
fishing town.
he's like, "Hey, go get your stuff. I'm I'm out of here. I'm tired of being the guy that like the nice guy that gets taken advantage of all the time. I'm I'm out of here. I can't do this anymore."
Right.
And there's probably something in the background because Lexi, there's some complications there that I'm not quite aware of, but kind of followed through the episode. And he wants to leave.
Yeah.
But so that's the episodic nature of this episode. Ponytail guy, after killing his brother, is like, "Ugh, fuck, I had to do it. He was like crazy and he was attacking me. And I'm just going to get my stuff, say my goodbyes, and leave. Yada, yada, yada. Has a change of heart. He punches this guy, handsome model dude.
Yeah, one of the guys who was afflicted with the troubles in this episode.
And one of the brothers. That's right.
Yeah, one of
The
the
Pressure
brothers.
Bros. Um, they get in a little scuffle that doesn't seem believable at all.
The
You can see it
destitute
coming a
plumber
mile.
brothers.
But my partner was like, "Man, I kind of just want to watch the live action parts of Destitute Plumber Brothers." I'm like, "Right." Anybody that's wondering what the hell we're talking about the Super Mario Super Show.
Yeah, which we covered back in December of 2021 on an episode of this podcast.
And there's a forgettable cartoon element with the intro and like book introed and bookended by
by
like a live action segment.
by live action segments. I think we hated the cartoon so much. If I remember correctly,
We didn't even talk about it.
we didn't. We just covered the live action bits.
It's bad. It's so bad. The live action bits are a joy. These two like older like dudes just like struggling to like make ends meet. Destitute plumber brothers. Yeah, and but they're not destitute. They're not plumbers. But we find out these two brothers that were pressurized. They got handprints. Ooh, they got the evil black mark of some sort of person that's giving people, or group of people that's giving people troubles. And Lexi's the only one that can see these mysterious handprints.
Which ties into the fact that she's actually the person who, like, many lifetimes ago,
Started all this bullshit.
created all of these problems under her original name, which was Mara, per the Haven Main .fandom.com wiki.
Oh.
There's a wiki for everything out there, I tell you.
The people that don't die from being too close to this pressurized event, um, there's two old guys. I'm not sure what their role is in the show, other than just being wacky and old. But they seem to be
Um,
like the lore keepers, or they know the history of Haven.
if I remember correctly, I think they run the newspaper, the town newspaper, and
Because they
they're also like kind of like ghost hunters essentially, relating to things,
they were
relating
entertaining.
to the troubles. One of them is played by Mr. Leahy from Trailer Park Boys. May he,
Absolutely.
may he rest in peace.
And rip in peace, Mr. Leahy. And these two guys, they find out that they're acting a little funny and they're sick. Basically, they have the bends, nitrogen in your bloodstream,
Yeah,
and it can kill you. It's what happens when divers surface too quickly.
yeah.
And just so happens that there's a pressurized, they have one of those depressurization tanks to slowly bring somebody's pressure down to surface level so that they can expel the nitrogen or something like properly.
Which I buy. I mean, this is a
No,
harbor
that
town.
part was
Yeah.
realistic. Yeah. I was like, yeah, I'm fine with that. And indeed, good looking uh, pressure brother, when they find out, hey, you're the one causing this, my dude, they put him in there for safekeeping. And they find out that through doing like diver breathing exercises,
Right.
which seems to just be going and like breathing slowly and like
So essentially,
meditating, calming
so essen
yourself.
so essentially, they're sending them to Lamaze class. Just,
It's important that you learn it too, not just your wife.
yeah. Well, hey, one of them one of the brothers actually does have a newborn baby too that they talk about.
And indeed, when he's in the pressure tank, he's like, you know what? My family line, we don't carry like the troubles. Like this can't be happening.
Yeah.
And they're like, deal with it, homie. And he's like, well, you know what? At least I'm not gonna have kids. My family name will live on with my brother. My brother, there's an exposition dump when he's
Yeah.
in the pressure tank. There's a lot of those, by the way. He's like, my brother just had a kid and he's gonna pass on the family name and we'll be trouble free. Dun dun dun. His brother's
Yeah,
like
that
woken up on a bench because they were both kidnapped.
it's not as cut and dry. There's a rule in visual storytelling, movies and TV. Show don't tell. It's not as cut and dry and black and white as they make it out to be in like first
I
year like screenwriting classes, but it is a general rule. This show completely like breaks that rule. It just tells us everything.
tells you
I,
everything.
it gives us everything in
Hope you're
exposition
paying attention.
in exposition dumps via dialogue, and presumably that's for budgetary reasons.
I That's what I was
I
thinking
mean,
too.
and we find out that the harbinger of doom is the impending doom of this town is a friggin' like horseshoe crab that I mentioned.
It's a
Friggin'
horseshoe
horseshoe
crab.
crab, just chilling out with human eyes, just chilling out.
No,
I
yeah,
when
and
I
one of the
saw
characters sees it and she's like, hey, did you see that horseshoe crab? And ponytail guy is like, No. And she's like, it had human eyes. And he's like, sometimes they have barnacles on them, and it looks like a face
Yeah.
or like eyes or
When
something.
when
And
I
she's like,
saw
no, it did.
when I saw this thing, like I laughed out loud.
So
I'm
did I.
like,
It's a CG horse crab, and it doesn't look menacing. It's just
no, not
it's
even
following
slightly.
this girl
Yeah.
for some reason.
But we find out from Mr. Leahy and his buddy that apparently this thing showing up is like a sign that like the end times are coming. And Lexi, Emily Rose, Lexi and Model Dude is all like
Model
tell
dude pressure bro.
yeah, Model Dude Pressure Bro is telling Lexi that he needs her to shoot him because that will end the troubles. And Mr. Leahy and his buddy figure out that actually no, that won't end the troubles. In fact, that's actually going to like bring about like the apocalypse essentially.
I was trying to pay attention. I don't remember. They're just like looking through old tomes and books, and they're like, no, that'll bring about the
Yeah, yeah.
apocalypse. And I'm like, I guess so.
So we ended up, and this is where I
Oh,
actually
group.
I had tuned out of the like checked out of the episode like within like 10 minutes of watching this show, but
Go ahead.
I
Sorry.
was I was gonna say so I ended up like quite literally wasting like 40 minutes of my life like just not giving a shit about anything that's going on until like the last like 3 minutes when we start hearing about all this stuff like what the horseshoe crab and like the end times coming and like all of that. Then I was like, oh, this is actually interesting.
I, yeah.
Anyway, sorry, you were gonna say.
And the funny thing is, on paper, or if you're listening to us talk about it, right? Um, on paper, it's not interesting either. Like, you must be listening to this and be like, so what happened? Like, some people went, ah, and held their ears. Maybe a couple people died, and then like 45 minutes is up. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, kind of. There's a part where like one of the pressure bros is like, "Oh, we were kidnapped, me and my brother. Oh, you have to believe me." And because a cop is waking him up because he's sleeping on a bench, like
Right.
and this police woman is like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, right. Get out of here." And he's like, "What? You're a police officer. You're not going to like believe me?" And she just thinks he's like a drunk sleeping it off out in a public bench, right? And
Right.
she like goes to arrest him, and he's like, What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what the fuck is this?" He's not like swearing at her. He's not being belligerent. He's just trying to be like, "Hey, lady, I was."
I mean, if she wanted to be like, and clearly this is what's happening, if she just wanted to be like a dink about it, she could arrest him for vagrancy.
Yeah, but it's unclear what's happening here. And stress or, your heart beating fast or anger or like whatever is what causes the pressure bros to make this phenomenon.
Right.
And cop dies and lights implode, etc., etc. And we talked about it. But the way they resolve, the way they get these like deep sea diver like outfits, um, this guy, ponytail guy, is talking about leaving, right?
Yeah.
And they're trying to like stop him. And the good looking model, like pressure bro, is like, hey man, like blah blah blah, you can't just leave right now. And ponytail guy like turns around, takes a swing at him, and like punches him. And the guy touches his mouth and he's like bleeding. And ponytail guy has some blood on his hand. And the camera zooms into the blood on his knuckles, right? And he looks at him and he's like, you lost your trouble. You don't have it anymore. How did that happen? And he's like, I don't care. And he goes to drive away. He comes back in 30 seconds with a giant van because the others are like, how are we going to help this brother, this pressure bro? He comes back in 30 seconds with like a deep sea diving van with the full rigs. And I'm like, and he's like, I'm here to help. And I'm like, so you had a change of heart. You contacted someone with all of this equipment and you drove back in like a minute or three, even if there
Yeah.
was like some like level of time jump, like just going from the like that conflict. Oh, guys just punch each other. That's how we sort it out. And it was so cheesy and CW feeling. And what did you say? Melodramatic and soapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is what made me go like,
uh,
oof, big oof. And again, why three people need to go wearing these deep sea things and going and talking to
Well, and it
the
ends up
brothers.
becoming rendered pretty dubious, like almost immediately, because like the one, as we were talking about earlier, the one guy's like air hose like breaks, and so the other guy has to like carry him to safety. So it just ends up being like Emily Rose like going to talk to this guy anyway. She could have just gone by herself.
Yeah, I or just his brother.
Yeah, or yeah.
And she goes and she's like, "Hey, I know you're scared, but you need to calm down." And he's like, "But my family don't get troubles. That's our thing." And she's like, "Remember your deep sea diving train." By the way, he's been like chilling out like on this bench for like an hour.
Hmm.
Who stays so like angry and scared and like nervous for like an hour? Like, dude, like chill out. And she's like, "Remember your deep sea diving." And the phenomenal actor is like, and she's
Good
like,
thing, good thing I learned CQC from the boss.
"Good thing I learned CQC from the boss." All right. Counterbalance the knife. Stab. Retract the blade. Crab battle. Um,
Crap, kind of, yeah.
and I wish there was a crab battle. I wish that that stupid CG horseshoe crab, like really cheesy, like Star Trek the original series, like dun 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 dun, like fighting like a
You know what it
little
kind
like
of reminds
monster.
me of when we reviewed Deepwater Black, those like slug things that they were dealing with. Like I got the like the same vibe.
Just
Yeah.
like a creature that's kind of reacting to people, but not really. Just a
Yeah,
weird little creature.
and we're supposed to think it's much more menacing than it actually is.
Okay, that vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like it's a horseshoe crab. Kick it.
Yeah.
It's even the girl who sees it. The one with shorter dark hair, I think. She's driving in the middle of town, and she parks. She looks in her rear view mirror, and she sees that motherfucking crab like 20 feet behind her truck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, go and stomp it. And she gets out of her truck, and it's gone. And I'm like,
I just imagine the thing like just leaping away and like flying very cheesily, like flying through the air. Very like
like an effect where
superimposed
superimposed, and what they
image.
do is they just shrink the image to make it disappear in the distance rather than actually maneuvering it.
It's like when we reviewed that episode of Stargate, and like I think it was the prior of the Ori, like did when the Jaffa were all like, no, we want you to leave, he did a thing with his staff, and it was just like superimposed images of them being like shrunk into the
The
off
JPEG
into the
image
distance.
was just they just grabbed the corner of the JPEG and like shrunk it down to make it look like they were
Yeah,
disappearing. Not even into the distance, like into orbit, like
yeah, into
thousands of
orbit.
miles. But that was better. I think they knew what they were doing. I think they were like, you know what? Don't spend any more time on that. It's great. See, I like how we're thinking of like low budget ideas that are cheaper than what the show that we're reviewing right now, Haven, actually did.
Yeah,
Like, don't show like.
when they're clearly like operating on a budget with this episode.
I don't need a CG horse crab. Grab a real horse crab and put googly eyes on that motherfucker. I,
In fact, if they did put
that might be
googly
scarier.
eyes on it, that would be more amazing than what the show actually delivered to us.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
what happens? I guess this guy, ponytail guy, he resolves things, decides to stay, right?
Yeah.
And the pressure bros, even though they don't normally have a trouble, they're people giving people troubles.
Yeah.
And he decides to stay, resolves things, and they're like, "Oh,
He
old
hooks up
dudes."
with the short-haired chick.
Yeah. Oh yeah. At least
Uh,
that chemistry there was believable. I'll give them
it's
that much.
there's this really like awful like melodramatic scene like just Omega level cringe
Oh,
between Lexi and like
yeah.
the model plumber brother,
That was
pressure brother.
you have to and they're shirtless, by the way, for half of the episode. Oh, and at the very beginning, by the way, old scraggly haired man is like, you Ziggy says that you need to make her fall in love with you before you jump or before you leap.
Right.
It's a little quantum leap joke for you folks.
Yeah.
And he's all like, these things take time. But it had opened up with them like being like hot and heavy.
Yeah.
So he's supposed to, I don't know what's going on, timelines or something like that, but he's
So
supposed to get her
there's
to fall in love with her. Him.
yeah, so there's this really like really cheesy and like melodramatic scene where Emily Rose and this pressure bro guy, he's all like, "You have to kill me. It'll end the troubles." And she's like, "But I can't. I just can't." And he's like, "You must
The
do
greater
it.
good. And as he's like
You can
holding her
do it."
head and think
He
about it, like,
holds like grabs the gun and like puts it in her hand and puts it to his chest and like caresses her hair. It's oh my, it's so fucking terrible.
I compared it to CW, but like,
I think it's
and
worse.
little
It's
De
yeah.
Niro impression for you.
Uh, uh,
It's worse.
yeah.
You comparing my show to CW? You looking at me? Fuck. I just, audio listeners, I just realized the face I was making scrunched my face so hard I looked like Robert De Niro.
uh,
But yeah, it's so corny. It's just like, you can do it. And then the group is
and after
obviously on their way to
on their
stop them
way
from doing this.
to stop them from doing this, because this is when they figure out that like killing him will actually bring about the apocalypse and not prevent it. And then there's just a gunshot heard, and that's the
Ponytail
end of the
guy
episode.
is like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, we need to stop Audrey from killing Pressure Bro. And they're like, wait, did you just call her Audrey? And he's like, don't worry about it. Anyways, let's go. And as they're bullshitting and arguing on the steps, instead of just stopping them, there's a gunshot. The
Yeah,
episode ends.
mercifully.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Usually there's enough to like make fun of a show and rip it apart to have fun. All of the fun parts that we've introduced to this review are stuff we imagined. Like there's no horse crab flying through the horse crab, um,
just
horseshoe crab
flying through
flying
the air.
through the air. We're just imagining things now.
We're rewriting the episode.
Yeah, we do that sometimes
Um,
when something's usually exceptionally bad,
you,
as it
you know,
were.
you know what I was kind of disappointed about is Adam Copeland, better known as WWE star Edge, had
Hmm.
a recurring episode on this show from seasons 2 all the way to the end of the series, and he was on a lot of episodes. I
Edge
was
was on
very
the show?
Edge was on the show in a lot of episodes. I was very disappointed that we didn't land on an episode that had Edge in it. Uh, let's see.
Man.
Let's see. How many episodes was he in? He appeared in 42 episodes of the show. And like of all the episodes we landed on, we didn't land on one of those 42 episodes.
Just imagine him like running from like off screen. Spear! My God.
Yeah, it looks like he plays a cop.
Oh.
Yeah. Young Edge. Looking at a picture of him here, and I'm like, oh wow, yeah, this is definitely Edge from like 10 years ago. He's
Oh yeah, you're right.
yeah, he's getting up there in age. I think he's in like his late 40s now.
Oh, he's like late 40s.
Yeah. So, and this was like a decade ago, so this would have been when he was around my age now, probably.
What? And
Looking
here we are,
significantly
not
better,
being on Sci-Fi Originals.
right? How many WWE championships have you won, good sir?
And how many Sci-Fi Originals have I been on?
Right?
Nobody will know. But I have
Until
been on a Nickelodeon direct-to-TV movie.
oh yeah, yeah, you've mentioned that before. That's pretty cool. That is actually pretty cool. I've been on the news once.
I've been on the news for a LARP. I'm in the
I
background, like dressed like an assassin, drinking a beer.
I appeared on the news because I was stopped randomly and asked my opinion about the royal family making a trip to Canada and like the fact that it was costing Canadian taxpayers like $6 million a day for like the 10 days that they were planning on being here. And I was asked like what my opinion of that was, and I basically just went off on this big like not rant, but like I went off on this big thing about how like the British monarchy is pretty meaningless to modern Canadian society, and like we shouldn't be footing the bill for that kind of thing, and yada yada yada. I don't know.
No,
This was like 5 years ago, but yeah, I ended up on the my interview actually ended up on the news.
rad. Yeah, I remember seeing a part of it and you being like they're they have more money than they could ever spend, so why are we paying for their stay here?
Yeah,
Yeah. And I was like, wait, why are we helping billionaires?
yeah.
Why are we paying for billionaires stay?
Yeah, what is them coming to visit us? Like, what is that doing for us besides costing us money? Because I don't know about you, I don't really give a shit about meeting the British royal family, or not even meeting them, but I don't like give a shit about like seeing them in like a fucking parade or something. I'm like,
Seeing them from 200 feet away, like maybe look in my direction.
yeah,
I can only
no,
name like three of them. It's like the Queen, Prince Harry.
Prince William, I think is his brother's
Yeah.
name. Their dad is Prince Charles. I remember Princess Diana like dying
And
in that car crash like
yeah,
25 years ago. But that's about it. Anyway, to get back to Haven, Cal,
no
you
royal
just
family here.
Cal, you just I'm sure I already know the answer, but you just caught a random episode of Haven. Would you tune in again?
Man, I wouldn't even have tuned in for this whole episode. I stuck with it because, and I will tell you why. I'm a fan of like SCP Foundation,
Yeah,
right? Secure, Contain, Protect. I'm a fan of Stalker, Shadows of Chernobyl, right?
yeah,
Like paranormal things in small town. There's a TV show called Jericho, right? Like weird X Files. Like I'm a fan of these weird things and troubles popping up. So like on paper, the premise of the show, hell yeah, I'm all for it. There was not a single 5 minute chunk of this entire episode that would make me continue watching the rest of the episode.
yeah.
Like if I had
Um,
tuned in for 5 minutes, I would immediately switch the channel.
I
Definitely not tuning in next week.
I gotta be honest. I actually, while I was watching it, I paused it and went and did other things like 3 times during the episode. I just
Just so
was,
you didn't.
I was so like I just was so uninvested in it.
I watched it from the beginning to end. I had the subtitles. I paid attention like a good boy. Um, I nothing, man.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm
There's
with
nothing
you.
for me.
I'm with you. Like I said, back in the day, back in 2010, I watched with my partner at the time. I watched the first season, liked the show well enough.
Ponytail guy's hot,
Yeah.
and he owns a boat. But
Um,
I guess that's my positive review of the episode.
Audrey is also hot, so maybe that's why I was able to get through the first season of the show back in the day. I don't know. But anyway, I don't intend to ever watch any more of this ever again.
And if you're listening to this and it's your favorite show, one, don't lie. Don't pretend it's your favorite show. But no, if you genuinely do like it, tell us why.
Yeah.
Right? Because we watch one episode.
Yeah.
We're not the arbiters of the entire show, but tell us why. Tell us what happens. Feel free to spoil it,
Yeah,
because
we're
we're
not going to
probably not
watch it
going to watch
anyway.
it.
uh, well, anyway, that was episode 45, the Lasercomb podcast. If you want to pick a show for us to review a random episode of, you can do that at patreon.com/lasercomb, LAZORCOMB. Uh, Single $5 tier gets you that, gets you preamble audio of this and all the other shows we do, commentary tracks, our news and current events program, Lasercomb Tonight, and you get to vote on polls for things. And yeah, go check that out.
Yeah,
Patreon.com
like
slash
the poll
Lasercomb.
for the theme of next month, for example.
Yeah, which is has been settled upon. I kind of had a mental moment where I thought this was
Me
actually
too.
going to be the last week of Sci-Fi Originals
I
month,
had to check my calendar when you're like, there's another week left.
and then I
And I'm
realized
like,
there's still another week in August, and I'm like, oh, okay, so we are going to do another show, Sci-Fi Original then. All right. But yeah, September is educational shows, and I think we're going to be starting off with where Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego? Not the game show on PBS, but it was a Fox Kids animated series.
Hmm. Yeah, the game shows Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
Yeah. Um. So yeah. Yeah. Want to get in on that? Patreon.com/lasercomb. You can follow me on Twitter at lasercomb, spelled the same way. Cal, you are at.
I'm at NeoCal, NEO_KAL on
Uh,
Twitter.
we're gonna we're gonna be back next week to cap off our Sci-Fi Originals month because, as I just mentioned, we kind of we realized today that there is actually still another week in August.
It's not
Uh,
the 28th? Weird.
right. So what we are going to be talking about is Stargate Universe. Because why not? It came down between that and Eureka, and Cal was just like, we already talked about SG-1 in Atlantis, so why not?
Yeah.
And I'm like, fair enough. So let's do it.
And I've never seen any of it. This is the only Stargate that I've seen none of. So
It
in
was
fact,
not a
didn't know it existed.
was not a popular show upon release, let me tell you. I enjoyed it, but
When did it release?
ran from 2009 to 2011. It premiered after Atlantis was canceled,
Oh,
which is another reason why a lot of people hated Stargate Universe was, and I'll talk about this more next week, but a lot of fans were like, "Oh, they just canceled Atlantis so they could make this crappy show." And it's like, "No, they were ending Atlantis anyway and just decided to go a different way with the franchise." But again, I'll talk about that more next week. Gonna hit screen share, go to the old trusty random number generator. I already know off the top of my head that there were 40 episodes of Stargate Universe, so one random numbers between 1 and 40, and here we go.
where it stops.
On 19. That is the penultimate oh, for Christ's sake. That is
This
the
is a theme here.
This is the penultimate episode of season 1, Incursion Part 1. All right, well,
Of season 1.
yeah, Incursion Part 1. So, all right, that's what we're watching, I guess. And turning off screen share. So, yeah, we'll be back
Not
next
written
week.
by Speedweed.
Oh yeah, we forgot to
Did we even
bring up
mention-
forgot to bring up old Speedweed.
We
Yeah,
did.
this episode of Haven was written by a dude named Speedweed. That's all.
That's all.
All right, we'll be back next week with episode 46 of the Lasercomb podcast. And until then, I've been one of your hosts, The Siege.
And I'm NeoCal.
Thanks for listening. We'll bore you to tears next week.
Take a trip to another dimension.